Hi, I'm Nick Corey and you're watching my video series RPG Design, where I build a brand new tabletop role-playing game system from the ground up, and you're just here along for the ride, watching as I go, learning from me, and maybe even helping me with your feedback and your comments. In the first video of this series, we talked about the core mechanics that I want to use for this game system, which is a dice pool mechanic. Each character will have 2 to 3, maybe even 4 different pools of 6-sided dice, and they choose from those dice to take different actions and resolve different situations as the game progresses. So if you want to learn about the core mechanics, check out that video. In this video, we're going to be talking about characters, PCs, character creation primarily, but we also might dip into how the different aspects of characters will work as you play, and also how you advance through that. So let's go ahead and get started. We're going to take a look at our prototype character sheet. Again, this is a very early build, pretty much just conceptual at this point. So this will look a lot prettier with the final version. This is not indicative of what the game will look like as we near completion of this game. In the first video, we looked at the dice pools, the core dice, power dice, and bonus dice pools. So we're going to ignore that part of the character sheet, and we're just going to focus on this stuff, which is the meat of your character. Character creation follows a 6-step process, and the first step is choosing a race, which we're going to skip that part today, simply because races are really dependent on the setting, and I want to avoid setting information until we get closer to the end of this video series, after the game is really developed and we can actually go through the setting. So we're going to start then with values, which is the second step of character creation, choosing 2 different values. Now Values are what your character holds as most important, their ideals, their motivations, the things that they think are essential to their lives. For this mock-up character I was making, his value or her value, this person's value, are order and justice. So they have a strong value for the established order, governmental regime, social status, that sort of thing, and also an established value for justice and the law, punishment, adequate punishment, fairness under the law, that sort of thing. So you can see this character as valuing both order and justice. They're probably going to be like a paladin type character, some sort of justly knight, that sort of thing, in a fantasy setting. In a modern setting, probably like a cop or something like that. What do values do? Well, mainly they influence or inform the RP of your character, as they show how your character is going to react to different things or how they're going to view certain circumstances. But more importantly, they also play a big role in character advancement, as while you act within your values, you will gain additional destiny, which is your experience points as you play. So in the game, in a game session, if you make a big decision based off of the justice value, so for instance, if this character chooses to bring someone into custody rather than kill them, a notable person, not just like your random mook, so not like an orc, but like the orc chieftain. If they choose to take the orc chieftain into custody rather than kill him, that would gain this person an extra destiny for that game session. So values play both an RP and an advancement point, and we'll get more into values later on. There are 12 different values currently. After you choose 2 values, you then choose 3 traits. And that's this section right in the center of the character sheet are your 3 traits. Every character has 3. You may change traits, but it does take time, and it takes over multiple game sessions, and with focused effort, a character can change traits. So this character that we have here, this mock character, has 3 traits. They are buff, tough, and reckless. So this character is physically strong, physically imposing, and also someone who puts safety or caution to the wind. There are currently over 30 traits, and each trait informs physical and personality types, physical characteristics, personality types, level of education. It's this more kind of a level deeper into your character. So we go from values, what they hold important, to who they actually are, or what kind of person they are. Buff, tough, and reckless. Some traits will have a requirement. You have to have your attributes arranged a certain way in order to take certain traits. But overall, it's pretty much free form. You can have any character with any set of traits. Now, after you choose your 3 traits, the next step is to choose 4 talents. And your talents are determined by your traits. Each trait will have 3 or 4 or 5, maybe even 10 different talents to choose from. And you choose from any of the talents provided by your traits to start with. You choose 4. So this particular character has the buff talent, has the buff talent of Heavy Strike. He has the tough talents of Vigorous and Hard to Harm, and he has the reckless talent of Fueled by Pain. Now the talents, are your specific abilities that are going to adjust your dice pools, change your rolls, allow you to automatically succeed on certain tests, that sort of thing. So as an example, we have the Heavy Strike talent, which my shorthand writing here is an abbreviation for it, but it's basically, on a successful armed attack, spend 3 dice to increase your damage by 1. So that means if going back to what we covered in our first video, if let's say we rolled 2 dice to make an attack and we succeeded, we have 3 dice left over. We can spend these dice to increase the damage by 1, as long as we're using a weapon. Now that kind of seems like a little costly using 3 dice, but eventually you can upgrade these talents so that they become more cost effective, and also through different talents you'll be able to gain bonus dice, which you can then use to spend instead of your core dice, if that makes sense. So, that's an example of one talent. Another talent, for example, is the Vigorous talent from the Tough trait. Vigorous, when you exert, you gain 3 bonus dice instead of 2. So, if you are looking at your pool of 5 dice and you're like, this isn't enough, I want to exert to get more, normally when a character exerts, they gain 2 bonus dice. This character gains 3. And look at that. There's our 3 that we can spend to increase our damage by 1. So you can see how the dice kind of play around with each other, and you can move them around a bit more freely using your talents. After you choose your 4 talents, comes your 5 attributes, which are these 5 boxes right across the top here. These are your core attributes. Every character has these 5 attributes, and your ratings in these will be added to your die rolls of different tasks. The 5 attributes are Might, which is your physical strength and constitution; Agility, which is your physical coordination and dexterity; Personality, which is charisma, likability, bearing; Intelligence, which is obviously academic knowledge, factual knowledge, understanding of science; and Wisdom, which is your judgment, your experience, and your kind of defense against social attacks or lies, bluffs, that sort of thing, persuasion. So those are your 5 attributes. Each character gets 7 points to divide as they choose between their 5 attributes. Attributes may start at 0. That just means you roll, if you were to test intelligence, you roll your dice and you don't add anything to it, in the case of this character. Whereas when this character tests his might, he rolls dice and adds 3 to his total. After you get your 5 attributes, you then choose 6 skills. Every skill in the game has to be linked to one of the 5 attributes. Although how they're linked or which skill is linked to what is a little fluid. Characters can kind of customize that as they wish, as long as the game master approves it. Some examples of skills, for instance, with Might, there's the 2-handed sword skill. There is physical resistance skill, which would be your ability to physically resist harmful effects. Intimidate skill, which would fall under personality. For instance, when I talked about how linking it is fluid, you could say that the Intimidate skill could also be linked to Might. You could make an argument for that as a player, and the GM obviously would approve whether or not he wants it linked to Might. It probably would have been smarter for me in making this mock character to move that into Might instead, because if I were to test Intimidate here, I had 1 for Intimidate, 1 for Personality, whereas if it's under Might, I would add 1 for Intimidate and 3 for Might. And then Notice, Search from Intelligence, Mental Resistance, as I talked earlier, with Wisdom. Sense Motive would be Wisdom. Any knowledge skills would be Intelligence. Persuade or Charm or Bluff will be Personality. Agility would have like Balance or light weapons or ranged weapons, like daggers or bows. And then Might is your heavy weapons and that sort of thing. So that's an example of our skills, and I'll go more into skills in a later video. So that's our 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1 race, 2 values, 3 traits, 4 talents, 5 attributes, 6 skills. All your skills start at rank 1, by the way. And then the 7th step of character creation is gear, which again, that's totally setting specific, so I'm not going to get into that now. But that's the basics of character creation. So now you can see how building a character and how your dice pools that we covered in our first video, how they kind of go back and forth and inform each other. So thank you very much for joining me. We're going to come back here. Thank you very much for joining me for this video. I really appreciate it. If you have any feedback at all, feel free to let me know. And look forward to future videos where I talk about more specific stuff like character values, character traits, character talents, different things that you can do, and then eventually get into the setting that I'm planning to do for the system as well. So thank you very much, and I will catch you next time.